9 months after Assad's fall, Syria is unraveling. Sectarian clashes, Israeli strikes, and ISIS rising from the shadows. As Iraq winds down, Washington shifts the fight across the border. The question now, can America stop ISIS from clawing back power? The United States has begun drawing down its military presence in Iraq, a year after Washington and Baghdad agreed to end the US-led combat mission there. Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell said the move reflects
an effort to transition to a lasting U.S.-Iraq security partnership in accordance with U.S. national interests, the Iraqi Constitution, and the U.S.-Iraq Strategic Framework Agreement.
Under the plan, most American troops will relocate to the Kurdistan region, while others will remain in Baghdad in advisory roles. Officials said fewer than 2,000 US personnel will ultimately stay in Iraq, compared to about 2,500 earlier this year. A senior US defense official told reporters that the decision places responsibility for countering ISIS in Iraq on the country's own forces, describing them as capable after more than a decade of training. The official said the shift is intended to end the forever war in Iraq and align the partnership with the US-Iraq Strategic Framework Agreement.
We're ending the forever war in Iraq. We've trained them for a decade, and they have the capability to counter ISIS, and they have the will.
While the mission in Iraq winds down, American forces will continue operations in neighboring Syria, where more than 900 troops remain. The official noted that Syria's relatively new government and the ongoing threat from ISIS have kept the US presence there steady for several months.
There's fragility associated with the new government that's very well understood, including being articulated by the government itself. And so, we're just watching to see how the government forms and what the security apparatus looks like before we make any other decisions with respect to US forces. These camps are incubators for radicalization.
Pentagon estimates suggest around 9,000 ISIS fighters are still held in detention in Syria, alongside tens of thousands of displaced people in camps at risk of radicalization. The United Nations is expected to assume management of those camps, with US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces providing security support. The United States is redirecting its military focus in the region, placing Syria at the center of efforts to contain the remnants of ISIS. US officials told Reuters that as troop levels in Iraq decline, most American forces will be repositioned to Kurdistan to oversee operations across the border. Fewer than 2,000 troops will remain in Iraq, primarily in Erbil, while Baghdad will assume greater responsibility for its own security. A senior US military official said ISIS no longer presents a persistent threat inside Iraq, a development that allows Washington to transfer more of the burden to local forces. The official added that American strategy now hinges on countering ISIS networks operating in Syria.
ISIS no longer poses a persistent threat to the Iraqi government or to America from Iraqi territory. This is a major achievement that allows us to transfer more responsibility to Iraq to lead its own security efforts.
The focus on Syria has also brought new diplomatic engagement. In September, Admiral Brad Cooper, head of US Central Command, met Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa in Damascus. The two discussed security cooperation and agreed to maintain future talks aimed at limiting the group's reach. Cooper emphasized that repatriating foreign nationals from the camps remains essential to long-term stability. Meanwhile, coalition operations have targeted senior ISIS commanders in recent months, with joint missions in Hama, Idlib, and Aleppo. These strikes underscore Washington's message that the group's leadership continues to pose risks beyond Iraq. Even as operations intensify, the US has begun consolidating its presence, closing smaller bases in northeastern Syria and trimming troop numbers. Officials say the posture remains conditions-based, but the mission's center of gravity is now firmly in Syria. Nine months after Bashar al-Assad was toppled, Syria is facing renewed instability. The country is now under the control of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, but sectarian clashes, Israeli strikes and internal divisions threaten to unravel the fragile government. Adding to this turmoil is the return of one of Syria's most enduring challenges, the Islamic State. Since Assad's fall in 2024, ISIS has waged a terror campaign across the country. Once a force of nearly 100,000 fighters, the group now numbers closer to 2,500, yet its operations are growing more frequent and sophisticated. A church bombing in Damascus in June killed 25, and a wave of ambushes and bombings followed in the northeast. According to the United Nations, ISIS carried out nearly 300 attacks in Syria last year, more than double the previous year. These attacks are eroding the new government's legitimacy as communities remain vulnerable to sectarian violence. The threat could intensify further as Washington reduces its troop presence. The United States has been the backbone of the global coalition to defeat ISIS since 2014. But the administration has announced plans to wind down its mission in Syria by 2026. Troop levels have already dropped from 2,000 to about 1,400, with further cuts expected. ISIS, meanwhile, is seeking to exploit Syria's divisions. It says that President Ahmed al-Shara and HTS are illegitimate and accuses them of serving foreign powers. By escalating attacks, the group aims to demonstrate the government's weakness and rally recruits. As US forces consolidate and local security remains fragile, Syria faces the prospect of an ISIS resurgence, threatening not only its own stability, but also the wider region.
هذا النصر يا اخواني جديد للامه الاسلاميه باكملها. هذا النصر يا اخواني تاريخ جديد للمنطقه.